Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with another market recap, this time for August 23rd. It is a Thursday, and it was overall a very weird Thursday. Not a lot happened, and yet a lot of things have really interesting trade setups. So I'm excited to take a look at that with you guys here this afternoon. Before we get down to business, looking ahead to tomorrow's open, we do have a few S&P 500 companies coming out with earnings. As you can see here, we have the Gap, HP Inc., Intuit, Ross, so a few more retails, Autodesk, and then Foot Locker is coming out before the open tomorrow. So we've got a handful of companies that we want to keep an eye on from an earnings point of view. Just when you think earnings is done, it just never really gets done, right? But keep an eye on those, especially the retail. I think it's been very hot. We've seen some really good earnings in the retail. We've seen some misses too. L Branch really missed the mark this morning, got way down. But for the most part, I think it's been pretty strong over in retail. So let's just see if we can continue that overall momentum. Taking a look at our broad markets, broadly speaking, it was one of those days that at first glance, you think, how are you going to spend 5 minutes talking about the market, much less 15? But when you dig a little deeper, there's definitely some interesting things. Taking a look at the NASDAQ, same general ballpark as we were yesterday, pushed up a little bit early this morning, ran into resistance, pushed back down, and nothing new to report. Again, we've been saying this for a while, but until we break, one way or another, we have to keep saying it, right? So we definitely continue to push the upper end, but have yet to have any success as far as breaking out of that resistance over on the NASDAQ. Really the same thing going with our S&P 500. After hitting that brief all-time high the other day, doji yesterday, a little bit of downward movement today, nothing substantial. Just again, hanging out right below that resistance level. Not a surprise, right? We always talk about how it's hard to break resistance, so we shouldn't expect it to just go through because it would be convenient. But that's where we find ourselves. On the one side, I'm very encouraged that we continue just to not sell. I would think struggling at resistance, I always would think pull back, and it doesn't seem to want to do that. So that certainly is a sign of strength. Obviously, it's not able to break out, so we'll have to continue to monitor that going forward. The Dow Jones was able to kind of sell off a little bit today, kind of closing right around that old resistance level that broke out of the other day. A lot of indecision, nothing really too exciting to report here. Again, we kind of dipped a little bit below that breakout point, not the end of the world by any means, but we kind of rallied up to kind of close, kind of pretty much sitting right on top of it. So interesting, but really nothing has changed. I don't think technically on any of our indexes, certainly on the Dow Jones. A little bit of selling over in the Russell today. Nothing to be concerned about from a technical point of view. Didn't carry on the momentum of the last 2 days following that break, but nothing bad happened, right? We don't have to go straight up as much as we would like to when we're trading bullish breakouts. Question for you guys in joining us here live. Do you guys think this thing is going to break out? You think we're going to see the S&P, the NASDAQ ultimately break through resistance like the Russell and get some oomph behind the market? Or do you think eventually these levels of resistance are going to knock us back down? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that. So if you have an opinion, I lean to, I expect a breakout. Again, I'm not betting money until it breaks. It hasn't broke. But that's kind of where I lean right now. That's kind of where I've been looking for new things. I've been looking for potential breakout candidates. So I lean on I think it is going to break. And hey, the great thing about this type of conversation is we're out no money. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, you're right, right? So I'd love to hear what you guys would have to say here in the chat today. So really kind of just a day, really, when you look at it from an index point of view, just kind of a day in the market. But when you kind of take it down to the next level and start looking at some of the sectors and the commodities, that kind of spices up a little bit, I think. Here we have our material sector right back, right back into that old range that it briefly broke out of, but really almost act like it didn't happen here today. This is in a really weird spot, in my opinion. On the one hand, till we break, we don't break. On the other hand, I look at this and in my head, I'm thinking, if this breaks to today's low tomorrow, that to me seems like it'd be pretty bearish, and so I'm not, I don't really know if I've got a strong opinion on this or not. Right now, we are still in that range. So based off of how it's behaving, I won't have to make a decision about that tomorrow. But that is something, after that first break, we're right back in there. If we break it again, I think I probably would not want to be a bull at all, personally. But again, we'll see if it even can break out of that. Right? Sooner or later, it's going to have to. It keeps tightening up, but that doesn't have to be tomorrow, even if it might be convenient for me for it to happen. Taking a look over here at our energy, no huge surprise. We talked about it yesterday. We're kind of hanging out at that old support zone that they really bounced back and forth on for quite some time. We started to struggle. We didn't see anything dramatic, but we did dip down, dojied a little bit underneath that old support level. I still think this is kind of a tough sector right now, personally. I'm leaving it alone on my own personal end, but we do know where support is. We do know where resistance is, and I could see, a case that if we break back up into that old trading range, that we could expect maybe we got back into that range, opening up the door for some potential bullish opportunities. If we, falter, see some downward movement at this support level, I could see the case for the bearish side of things. I really could see both sides. I don't think there's anything today, really, but I could see both sides. And when I could see both sides, I don't want to mess around with it. I'm perfectly content to say I don't know. Maybe tomorrow, right? Financials did continue to sell off of resistance. Certainly no terrible surprise, but definitely some movement, a little bit more movement there than we saw some other areas here today. Still, holding support, so nothing really dramatic. We're struggling at resistance, no big surprise, right? We'll see how it develops over tomorrow and obviously going into next week. But at least as of today, another week passes with that resistance winning the fight over in the financials. Industrials continued to sell, did close a little bit below that old breakout point. What I was kind of thinking as I was looking at this, and I've not had a great read, I'll be the first to admit, on the industrials lately. It's not been one of my sectors that I've really felt great about. I was thinking, is this a fail? And then I was thinking, well, if it's a failed break, then we'll see some downward movement. We'll never get back above it, right? So we'll see some downward movement to get a little confirmation. If it's nothing, but just a bad day at the office, well, we should have to go above today's high tomorrow to even get some bullish signals. So I don't think I have to make a call on XLI today. I think tomorrow's candle might be, something I can work with. Today, I'm just going to have to wait and see what it looks like tomorrow. But overall, still remains pretty strong. I could make a case for a little bit of a pullback, certainly, and again, that might be how we're looking at it, 2 or 3 days from now. But today, that's where I see it personally. Looking at tech, I don't know why we even bother clicking on this button, because it's always looking like the NASDAQ, right? But we continue to consolidate right below that resistance level, potential breakout. But until it happens, of course, it doesn't happen. Now to the interesting fun stuff. Now we're going to get into some real fun stuff. Here's our staples. Of course, we had pretty decent little pullback over the last few days. We did establish a doji as indecision came in today. That selling momentum definitely died down. Remember, of course, a doji is a turnaround candle. And so that is just one signal that potentially this is ready to turn back around and go the other way, depending on, your own individual trading rules. If you're super aggressive, you might be getting in tomorrow if it breaks today's high. That's an aggressive method. Doesn't make it a wrong method. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong, but it is pretty aggressive. If you're on the more conservative side of things, we need to see a full candle develop tomorrow, another positive candle, get a close. Positive, then all of a sudden going into Monday, maybe that opportunity is ready for us. So I love where this is, much like I loved that pullback last time. Don't think we've had any, triggers to get you into a trade yet. At least from my own personal point of view, you haven't. But that might change as early as tomorrow with the way that this chart looks. So very interesting development over in the staples. Utilities too. I don't love them as much, but they certainly had that nice clean break, and they're now hanging around that old resistance as support. I don't love today's candle. They tried to get going early. Ultimately, that didn't happen, and they kind of just closed down near the bottom of that range. If that were to be a doji like we saw over in staples, I might be a lot more excited. But price-wise and I guess placement-wise, where it is on the chart, I do like the way that it looks. Personally, certainly that old resistance acting as support would be what I would expect to happen in this type of a situation. So I do like the way that that is shaping up. I like the candlestick on the staples a lot more, personally. There's a lot of selling pressure in today's candle, even though the placement on the chart is pretty nice, in my opinion. Another day, another hanging out at the top in our healthcare sector. Just doesn't want to sell off. It doesn't want to pull back. But it's hard. Who wants to buy it at this all-time high without the break? It's one of those type of things, still showing a ton of strength, in my opinion, by not selling off, but hard to get through that resistance level. I'll have to continue to monitor it. I mean, I would love to see it, spend another, 3 or 4 or 5, even a week consolidating up top here and then break through. That would be perfectly fine by me. So that's kind of my hope as I kind of watch it going forward. But as I say all the time, I can hope for what I want. I just can't expect it to happen. Over in discretionary, we continue to hold our break. So we were able to break through. No real momentum today, much like yesterday's candle, one of those bland days. But technically speaking, our breakout certainly remains true, remains intact. So that's certainly a positive thing over there. Can't really complain about the way that break looks. And looking at our real estate, again, another pullback opportunity that hasn't had that candle yet, right? Like our utilities hasn't had that potential. I don't think this is a reversal candle that we're seeing here today on real estate. But again, kind of don't mind that. I kind of hope that it waits till Monday, if I'm being honest. I'd rather not, set that, a trade up on a pullback trade on Fridays as a general rule. I'm not opposed to doing it, but again, if I can have it my way, I'd rather have the weekend behind me. But it looks like we're going to at least need one more day to get some sort of a turnaround candle or upward confirmation that the pullback is complete. But again, we know how strong this has been. We have to appreciate the potential pullback opportunity. So definitely some pullback opportunities, developing in utilities and staples and real estate, some breakout opportunities over in discretionary, potential breakouts over in financials and tech. So put in some work with that watch list this weekend would be my advice. Find some things that you might be interested in for a lot of different areas, right? A lot of different areas right now. Taking a look at our commodities, definitely developing very nicely on our dollar index. So it'd be another pullback opportunity, really strong upward movement here today. I doubt any of us here are horribly shocked about that. We knew that we had pulled back to that old breakout point, which also coincided with our 50-day moving average. Very tempting place from a bullish point of view. Definitely saw some nice upward movement off of that today, looking to test and hopefully confirm that recent breakout. So have to like the way that looks in my estimation. On the other side of the coin, had some bearish triggers develop here today in our metals, particularly here in our gold. Wish it wouldn't have dropped quite as much as it did, but I can't really blame the sellers for jumping in as fast and furious as they did. It had rallied up. We saw that doji yesterday right below that old floor. Who wants to sit through resistance in a downward trend, right? I don't. I imagine most of you don't either. Definitely some downward movement. Definitely a strong bearish candle, no doubt about it. So, if you were looking at, this is just a little bit of a relief rally over in gold, looking for the overall longer-term trend to develop. Definitely a signal happening today that is the case. Silver looking very, very similar to gold, had a little bit of a rougher day. Remember, Whenever we are watching for these retracements, whether it's a bull or a bearish retracement, if those days happen, like silver, I mean, that's a pretty big downward move. And I don't necessarily want to go short that close to that support level. So I can always, if that's the way it develops, but I do want to actually go short, I can look to come in if and when it breaks that previous support level. Now, ideally, the risk to reward is going to be there before the break, right? But sometimes that's just not the way it's going to play out. So if I do think that silver is going to continue to be bearish, but I look at it and I say, you know what, this candle was just too darn big. It was a beautiful candle, a really good sell signal, but my risk to reward is going to be kind of thrown off because I need my stop loss up here. And, I've got support down here. Well, I don't really believe in that support. It is some support. I don't really love that risk to reward. So I can look at that second entry if it breaks support, if I'm on bearish, or resistance if I'm on the bullish side of things. Just something to keep in mind. Overall, not necessarily specifically with silver and gold right now, but definitely some very bearish developments going on over there. I don't think anybody here is all that surprised. As soon as the easy part of the bull run got over, of course the sellers jump all over it, right? So looking at natural gas, we kind of continue to back and forth. It's in a weird place too. It's still showing a lot of strength. We did have quite a volatile day, some nice upward, some nice downward movement, kind of closing right there in the middle with a really long doji. But it's just got all that overhead. So we've got this strength, and it's really interesting from a bullish point of view. And then you just get all of this overhead that clearly it's not just us here in the market recap that have been watching that, right? We've seen how that's been behaving in that ballpark for a bit now. So we'll have to continue to monitor that, but certainly showing strength. Yesterday, really bearish candle. Today, we really started some selling, but turned a corner and we're able to catch our footing a little bit. So personally, not seeing a great opportunity in natural gas right now, but have to love the overall relative strength. There's no doubt about that. And then lastly, our crude oil, which is in a very, very interesting location in my opinion. Of course, we've had a pretty strong little run over the last week. We've worked into that old floor, starting to see that kind of as the area that's causing us some trouble. I think you could look at this, from a point of view that this could be a potential selling opportunity if we see downward movement in the next candle. I think you could look at it as a potential bullish opportunity if we're able to clear back and get above that floor. Now, I'm not really a fan of either of those situations, much like the energy sector as a whole. I'm kind of looking at this as just not seeing a great trading opportunity, at least a great directional trading opportunity within this area right now. But again, that is just me. So keep an eye on those areas. We do know how important that little short-term floor was. Obviously, we know how important this support down here is. Something can develop, and maybe it'll just take off and I'll just miss the boat, and that's all right. I'll wave goodbye to all the bulls and say best of luck to you. But maybe I can kind of start getting into this little range here between these areas, and then if one of them breaks, that'd be a pretty clear signal. Now, again, I'd have to wait and see that happen. That is, again, projecting ahead. But as I say all the time, there's nothing wrong with knowing what you'd like to see and hoping you get it. Worst case scenario, you don't. Right? Best case scenario, you do. So something like this, I know we didn't necessarily have that same support level, but where we came down, kind of rallied up, then we came back to the support level and it held, and then we broke resistance. And then we actually had some pretty bullish momentum. So if I could paint that bullish picture the way I'd like, I'd see some selling down into all the way, but not necessarily, it doesn't have to all the way be at the floor, but down towards the floor. It could be the floor. Then somewhere in here, catch and start working back up and then breaking out. That would be a bullish signal I think I could get behind. And again, I'm out nothing for just hoping I see that, right? There's other places for me to find opportunities in the market. You may have a much better read on crude oil than I do. That's certainly possible, right? We only want to trade things that we feel good about. At least I do. I don't want to put money on the line if I don't think there's really an actual edge for me. And I imagine everybody here feels the same way. But definitely an interesting location for crude right now. So pretty interesting day. We've got a lot of things. I wouldn't mind seeing tomorrow being the most boring day ever with nothing happening. And then some of these setups that are developed to get triggered into on Monday morning, whether they're retracements on the bullish side, or are bearish over in or go bearish on crude, if we go bearish on the metals, breaking out of resistance on the S&P. I mean, I hope tomorrow is boring. We'll see if I get what I want, but I would love to have tomorrow more tomorrow just be one of those days. So Monday, I have the whole week for whatever to develop that. So of course, knowing the way the market goes, it'll just go crazy tomorrow because it's tired of giving me what I want, right? So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the market recap for today. As always, it is certainly my pleasure, and I do appreciate everybody's time. If you haven't already, go ahead and make sure you subscribe to the Tackle Trading YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to be alerted of any new videos that we have going on over here. We love to share all our new stuff with you. If you did enjoy the market recap, it is always very helpful and appreciated to give it a thumbs up to let us know we're on the right track. So thank you in advance for that. Get out of here. Happy trading, and I will see you in the next one.